Okay, so in this video, we're going to look at how to make a Magic 8 Ball application. So for this application, we're going to need a few things. We're going to need to learn how to generate a random number, how to get a full line of text from the user as input. We're also going to look at switch statements and how to calculate the remainder whenever you divide two numbers and then you have a remainder left over. So we're going to look at how to do all those things in this video. So if you've never played with a Magic 8 Ball before, pretty much it's this huge ball that you have, and you kind of like fortune telling. It's a more of a novelty toy where you ask it a question and then you flip it over, and then it'll show you the answer to the question you asked. Really, what it is just it's a 20-sided die inside some sort of alcohol, some sort of liquid, blue liquid, and it floats to the top and it tells you the answer. So it's a fun little game that you can play. We're going to simulate that in our program. So let's go ahead and work on that right now. Okay, so I'm here in Linux. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do ls. I'm going to go to my video labs folder. Do ls again. Then I'm going to make another folder here. And I'm going to call it Magic 8 Ball. No spaces. Then I'll switch directories. And then I will, now that I'm in the folder, I will go to nano. I'm going to call my file magic.c. Okay, and then let me go and set up my template real quick. stdio.h. Then I'm going to do int main. And then return 0. There you go. Okay. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and just make ourselves some notes here real quick. I'm going to use a multi-line comment. Let's make ourselves some notes. So first thing we need is to generate a random number. Then the next thing we'll do is we're going to calculate the remainder. Using the modulo or modulus operator. Looks like that. We'll see how it looks in a little bit. And then after that, we're going to get a full line of text from the user as input. Using fgets. And then the last thing we'll look at is the switch statement. The switch statement is just like an if-else statement, but it's a little bit different. It's a little bit easier to type, and so we'll see an example of it here. Okay, so the first thing we need is, since we don't have an actual D20 in our computer, we're going to use a random number generator, or it's actually pseudo-random, because in the computer nothing's actually random. So in order for you to do random numbers, you have to do a few things. So first, we're going to include some extra libraries here. So we're going to include stdlib.h, and we also need to include time.h. Okay, so here, this is for the rand function. And this one will give us access to the time. to the number of seconds after January 1st, 1970. So how many seconds have passed since this date? Well, it's going to be quite a few seconds. A lot of them have passed. So we need that number, and this is something that constantly changes, of course, every second. So we need that number in order to seed our random number generator. If we don't seed the generator, then it's always going to give us the same random number over and over, because the function, of course, is static, and we need something that changes dynamically. So one thing that we can use is going to be the number of seconds. That changes all the time. Okay, so first thing you do when you do random numbers is you have to, of course, in C, you have to declare your variable. So I'm going to declare it int random. And the next thing you have to do is you have to seed the generator using a function called srand. And you pass in an argument here, something that changes. So I'm going to pass in the time. So if you do time 0, you do the time 0 function, this will give you the number of seconds that have passed since 1970. Okay, so we'll see that in a little bit. Alright, so then I'm going to do random equals, and then I'm going to call the rand function like this. So if you call a random function, this will give you a huge integer randomly. So we can see that. So I'm going to actually do some printf statements here. So printf, the first one, I want to see the time, the number of seconds that have passed since 1970 is. And then for this one, the format specifier, this is a special number here. It's going to be a long integer, so it's going to be LD like this. And then I'll put an exclamation /n, and then let me call the time 0 function again like this, so we can see that information. And then here we'll do printf, and then I'll put the random number. The random number is, and then we'll do %d /n, close the quotes, and then I will do random like this here. Okay. So with that, I think we can test this out. So let's go exit. Let me do gcc magic.c-o, and then I'll just call it program. /program. Okay. So the number of seconds that have passed since 1970 is this huge number here. And the random number right here. So this is a really large number, but it's good, it's random. Let's try again. Okay, so you see the seconds are increasing. And here are random numbers changing as well. Right. So it keeps going up. So remember, if you see your random number always staying the same, not changing, then that means you forgot to do the srand function. That's the most common error I've seen as far as random. So just don't forget that srand function. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back to our code. Okay. So then now the next thing we're going to look at is how to calculate the remainder. And we're going to see why we need that. So that's what we're going to do next. Okay, so we saw how the rand function works, and it generates a really huge integer. But for this particular problem, for our magic 8 ball, we only need 20 different responses. So if I get random number 1, I'm going to display one answer. If I get a random number of 20, I'm going to display a different answer. But overall, I just need 20 of them. Right now, it's giving me really huge numbers from 0 to trillion or whatever the number is. So very large numbers, don't need all that. So what you can do is you can calculate the remainder. So if I divide this number by 20 and then use the remainder as my random number, then I only need I'll get remainder, or get values of between 0 and 19, right? So let's look at how the remainder operator works. So I'm going to go here to the calculator. Okay. And I'm going to go to programmer here. And let's just do some simple integer division. So let's say I divide 10 by 3. Okay, so the answer is 3. Because it's just integer division. How many times does 3 go into 3? 3 times. It doesn't show the remainder. But now let's say I calculate 10 remainder, or mod, 10 mod 3. Well, we know that 3 goes into 10 3 times with a remainder of 1. Right, so then now the answer is 1. If I do, let's say, 9 mod 3, does 3 go into 9 evenly? It does. So then our remainder is 0. Okay. So as you can see, we're going to get only certain values. So let's say I want to figure out if a number is even or odd. So let's say I have 18. If I do mod 2, that's going to give me a remainder of 0. If I do 19 mod 2, then that's going to give me a remainder of 1. So whenever I get a remainder of 0, I know the number is even. Whenever I get a remainder of 1, I know the number is odd. Okay, and you can do that for any number. So mod 2, 0, it's even. So 21 mod 2, what's the answer? We already know it's going to be 1, because 2 goes into 20 evenly 10 times, but then you're going to have a remainder of 1. Right. So we can use the remainder to do a lot of interesting things. So what we're going to do here is we're going to reduce the number of random numbers. We're going to reduce them to just this range of 20 numbers, 0 through 19. So we come back here and we do mod, we do mod 20. Okay, now I'm going to save this, exit, let me compile again, right there, and then dot /program this. You see, so now instead of getting that really large number that we're getting before, now we're just getting 9. Okay, let's see if we can do this until we get a 20. We got 19, no 20 yet. Might take a while. We got a 1, a 9, a 16, a 2. This may take a while. Well, I guess there's no 20s. Or a 0. Either one. Okay, so we got a 0. Now, if you're trying to use this as a die has, let's say, D6 has 6 sides. You know that one of them starts at 1. It doesn't start at 0. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So in this situation, let's say we don't want random numbers from 0 through 19. Let's say we want them from 1 to 20. Well, we can do that, but we're going to have to adjust our formula a little bit. We're going to have to put a +1 in the formula. Okay, so I guess I'm never going to get a 20, so one day perhaps. Nope. Okay, so then let's go back to our program. Magic.c, and then let's go back here, and right now the way this is written, this will generate random numbers from 0 through 19. Okay, but let's say you want them from 1 to 20, then you just come back to this formula here and you do +1 like that. Then now this changes from 0 through 19. It changes from 1 to 20. So if I get a 0, it's going to become a 1. If I get a 19, I'm going to do +1. I'm going to get 20. Okay. So now that we have our random values, then the next thing we need to look at is how is the user going to input text, because they need to interact with this program, the Magic 8 Ball. They need to ask a question, so they need to type their text in the program. So they need to type the question completely. So for that, we're going to again use a char array, also known as a string. So we're going to go ahead and set that up. Okay, so here we should just keep all your variables together. So I'm going to do char, I'm going to do question, and just to give the user enough space to type, I'm just going to do 200 characters. Hopefully that's not too much or too little. Okay, so 200 characters. So then here, ask the user to enter a question. So the user has to interact with this program. Now we're going to store their input. That's why we're creating a variable here. We're going to store their input. The thing is, this program, of course, runs off the random number generator. So that's what's going to determine the answer. So their question really has no consequence to the final result. But to make this program more interactive, that's the only reason we're asking the user to enter a question. Right? It doesn't actually have any impact on the final answer. Okay, so I'm going to do printf, then prompt the user, ask the all-knowing Magic 8 Ball a question. Like that. Okay, so ask the all-knowing Magic 8 Ball a question. Okay, so then here we're going to do a new function, because we can't use scanf to capture the input for this, because they're going to type a whole bunch of spaces and a lot of different things. So, well, we could try it. Let's try it. So I'm going to do scanf, and then I'm going to do %s like this. And then remember, just for this particular situation, only put the name of the array. So it's going to be question. Okay. And then we're going to display some output, and then I'm going to display here. I'm going to do %s, and then I'm going to display whatever the question was. Whatever the user typed, I'm going to re-display it to them, just to make sure that I captured the information correctly. So let's see if scanf will work. Alright, so let's go ahead and compile this. Or let me clear all this. So I'm clear. I'm going to do GCC. It's easier if I just type it. And then program. All right. ./program. Okay. So we already have our number of seconds. We have our random number 14. Now it's time for the user to enter a question. So the first question will be, will I go to Disney World? Okay, so I'm going to press enter. And first of all, we're missing our new line, so we need to add that. But also notice here, we only got one word. We only got the will, and everything else was omitted, right? Because the way this works is that every time there's a space, it assumes that's the end of our, string. So that's how the scanf works. It just captures whatever's up to whatever the space is. So we have to use the fgets function, so that way it'll get everything up until I press enter. So that's why in this particular situation, we're going to have to use fgets instead, because we need to store all of the text, not just one word. So cut off at the space. So if we're just doing one word at a time, like you're just entering somebody's first name or somebody's last name, then scanf is perfectly fine. But once you need to enter a whole line of text, like let's say the title of a book or the title of a movie, then you're gonna need a different function. So that's why I wanted to show you there, so you don't forget. Okay. So definitely here on this one, we're gonna do the new line right there. And then here, we're not going to use the scanf. So this, you can either comment it out or delete it. We'll comment it out. So I know you tried it. Okay. So we're going to use a different function called fgets. So fgets, and it takes in a few arguments. First one is your variable, your string variable. So it's going to be question. The next one is going to be the maximum limit of characters. So in this situation, our limit is 200 characters. So I'm going to go and put 200 here. And then here, how is the input coming? Is it coming from a text file? Because you could get input from a file, not just the user. But in this case, we're just going to get from the user. So we're going to type stdin. So it's coming from the input from the user. And that's fgets with an S. Fgets. Okay. So now let's try this, see if this works instead. We'll go here. Let's try again. Compile. No errors. That's a good sign. Okay, so now let's answer the same question again. Will I go to Disney World? Question mark. Enter. You see, now it displays the whole answer. The whole question, I'm sorry. So before we only displayed one word here, we forgot our new line. Now we put the new line, and then now it stored the whole thing into the question variable. So remember, so if you're going to use fgets, only use it for strings. Don't use it for integers or floats or anything else. Okay. Just in a situation where you need to capture a whole line of text, then that's where you would use this. Okay. So now we've seen how to generate a random number. We've seen how to calculate the remainder. We've captured a whole full line of text from the user. Now the next thing we need to look at is going to be the switch statement. So I'm going to make a slight change here to our program. Rather than doing generating a random number from 1 to 20, I'm just going to do it maybe from 1. I'm going to do it for 6. So our magic 8 ball is going to be a little shortened, just for the sake of time, for the sake of typing so much. So we'll have 6 responses instead of the usual 20. So we'll have something like yes, no, maybe, try again, it's certain. We'll throw in a few, but we'll have 6. So let me change this again. So it's going to be, instead of 1 through 20 now, it's going to be 1 through 6. Okay. So from here, now we need to pick a response based off of the random number. Okay. So for a switch statement, it's very similar to an if-else if, but a little bit less typing. So we're going to do switch, and then in parentheses you have a control variable. The control variable is what is used to decide which choice to make, right? Which answer to display, which decision to execute. So we need a control variable. In this situation, the control variable is going to be random, because random is what's determining the right answer. So we're going to pass in random as our control variable. And then you have to have a set of brackets just like an if. The only difference is here you can only put an integer, you can put a char, and that's going to be it. You can't put any sort of comparison operators or anything like that. It's not like an if. It's just like a number. You can use a switch, like let's say you have a menu and the user has 4 choices to make. And they make choice 1, then you can pass in the choice in the switch and then display the right answer. But if you need to compare if one number is larger than the other, and if it is, do something, you can't really do that with a switch. Switch is not for that. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So you can't put conditional statements. But what you can put is a case. And then you can put either an integer or a letter or a char. So let's say the random number is 1, then it's going to execute the first case. What is the first case? Well, we can decide right now. Oops, sorry. Print F. And I'll just put yes. That's the first case. /n, like this. So the answer is yes. And then you have to type, after each case, you have to type a break. If you don't type a break, then it's going to execute every single case. And yeah, it's not going to work right. So we don't want that. Okay. So case 2. So here, it's going to check random. If random equals 2, then it's going to do case 2, which in this case will be, let's say, no. No. Okay, and then don't forget your break. And then here, notice I tabbed twice. Okay, I'm going to enter twice. I'll put a little bit of space. Case 3. And then we'll do print F. I'll type something like maybe. Okay, and then break. Okay, so I'm going to do case 4. Case 4 can be, let's say, print F. And then I'll put something like answer is hazy. Answer is hazy. Try it again. Okay, /n. And then maybe number 5 can be something more kind of like another yes, something like yes, it is certain. It's like a super yes right there. /n break. And then the last one is going to be case 6. And then print F. And that'll be like a super no. Like, no way. No way. You are crazy. So if you get that, you know it's bad. Okay. Then a break. Now, in the switch statement, you also get a default statement. Now, this one's optional, but it's good to include it. In this case, we don't need it because our random number is going to choose a case between 1 and 6, so the default case will never run. But let's say in another situation you need some sort of error message and the user has to enter 1 through 6 and they enter number 7 instead, or an 8 or a 9, then you could execute the default case. And the default case is usually for an error. It's like the else in the end of an if-else statement, and then you have the dangling else. The default's the same thing. You can do error here. Now, in this particular situation, this code will never run. I'm just putting it here so that way you have notes in case you need to do an error message. Then you know how to do it. So this, of course, will never run. But in another situation, if you type in the wrong input, then this will definitely execute. And then you put a break after everything. Okay. So a little bit less brackets than an if statement. So you can do your case, you can type a whole bunch of code here, just don't forget the break. If you forget the break, then instead of breaking out of the switch, it's just going to keep going down. It's going to cascade through all the cases. So you definitely don't want that. Okay, so let's do Control O, save, enter, exit, and let's compile. I'll go and do that. Okay, so no errors, that's good. Alright, so now let's ask her a question. Will I go to Disney World? It says no, I'm not going. Alright. Let's ask another question then. Let's see. Will I win the lottery? Will I win the lottery? Answer's hazy, try again. Oh man. Ask again. You see, so of course typing the question doesn't really change the answer, but it's fun to type it. It says no way, you're crazy. Alright, well, I guess I'm not quitting my job anytime soon, so I will be here teaching more programming videos since I will not win the lottery, but that's okay because I enjoy being here and doing this. So even if I had won the lottery, I would still probably be doing what I'm doing right now. Alright. Let's let's go back to our code real quick. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to compile. I meant to go back to the code. Alright, let's do something kind of crazy here. So what happens if you forget the break statements? So we're going to comment this, comment this. Alright, so we're doing a bit of an experiment here. Alright, so let's say I forget the breaks. So here I just commented them out. So let's go ahead and run it so you can see what happens. Alright, so let's go ahead and compile that. So it'll still execute, it's not a syntax error, it'll still work, but it should definitely be a logical error. Okay, so let's go ahead and run it. Ask our question, will I win the lottery? then press enter, and then look at that. It actually executes every single answer. So maybe, answer's hazy, yes it is certain, no way, you're crazy. So it actually ran through all the answers. So regardless of the case. So I think it went to, because it was random number 3. Okay, so it was random number 3. So let's go back to our code real quick. So what it did was it went to case number 3, and it played maybe, but instead of doing the break like it was supposed to, so it did skip 1 and 2, but then instead of breaking out of the loop or breaking out of the switch, then what it did was it did number 4 also, number 5, it did number 6, and I think it did default as well. So depending on where it started. So in this case, we got a random number of 3. So the initial output, if I exit, the initial one was maybe for number 3. Okay. So that's what happens when you forget the break statement. It's going to cascade down through all the cases, depending on where it starts. Alright, well, I guess that's going to be it for this video. I want to thank you for watching. I hope it was informative, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you very much.